Okay, just a reminder, we are recording this. Welcome to our weekly Tech Tuesday, which we're still keeping it weekly for now. But my name is Frank Whitmer with Brody Precision, and this week's topic is the CIPer Model 30, and specifically the Spyder to IPC migrator tool. Big part of working with the CIPer 30s is the ability to use and reuse your Spyder applications that you've worked with for some time now. And with the new tools for the IPC controller for the CIPer 30, we have the Spyder control program migration. And what it does is it will convert only the components that are contained within the control program. So the migration piece will be that part of it. So it's the piece that pops up when you go into engineering mode and your control program folder. Everything below that is what will be migrated. You don't get any of the Niagara points, any of the alarm extensions, history extensions, because obviously they're part of the points. So you don't get any points that are associated with that Spyder application. They don't get migrated. Not a big deal. You can create them again when you're within the CIPer 30. So keep that in mind that it's only the Spyder components that are within the control program that get migrated. You cannot migrate AX Spyder applications. You have to migrate stations up to Niagara 4 and then do the migration from the Niagara 4 version of those applications. So it's not that big of a deal to have to move them forward to work with them. I think most of you do that anyway with when you're working with Niagara 4 and you want to use your old AX library of Spyder applications. It will do applications with the TR75 and the scheduling. Only one time in scheduling. I know it's only one schedule within the Spyder will be migrated. So if for some reason you had more than one in there, which you typically are only going to have one scheduling component, it will get migrated over. Any job-specific start-stop times that you have in there will be removed, and a default schedule of times will be put into the schedule. So keep that in mind. And just like anything else, when you're doing any migration, you want to get back and double-check things and make sure that everything's set the way you want it. Schedule information, your point assignments, for your physical inputs and outputs, those kinds of things. You always want to go back in and check your work. But as you can see from the screenshot, the tools menu, and then there is a Spyder to IPC migrator tool is the selection. And there are 4 different ways that you can do Spyder migration. The first being station migration. So basically any Spyders that are within a station will be converted, and each Spyder will basically become a BOG file, which will have a IPC network application in there. So basically you're creating a station for every Spyder that is within your station. And it'll be underneath the IPC network, just like a standard CIPer 30 station would be. The second type is a library migration. So if you have a library, a Spyder library of applications that you work with, that you add to and pass around to your fellow employees, you're able to convert that complete library over to the IPC network application. So again, everything that's within that library will be migrated over as an IPC network, whether it's a complete Spyder where you're doing a device back or a device save to library, or if it's an application. Either way, it'll be migrated over into its own IPC network. You also have the ability to migrate your exported libraries. So if you are writing applications with Spyders and you export them, or you save them to a library and then you export them so that you can share them to other people that are working the project, those exported libraries can be converted into the IPC network for the CIPer 30. And then the other is, I'm not sure how often this gets used. I actually haven't done anything with it, but I did create a quick custom palette just to show how it works. But basically, if you have a palette that you created with applications that you always reuse, it will convert those palettes so that you can use them as a custom palette within the CIPer 30. So if we look at the, the migration and we look at the anatomy of a migrated station, so what happens is when you do a station migration, and you'll see on the tool here, you choose the file type of station, then you have a parent directory where the stations are located, the list of stations that it finds, and then you select which stations you want to migrate. And then the output directory becomes the parent directory plus a migrated stations directory. So whatever stations you select, the migrated ones will go under migrated stations. And what you basically have is within there is you're going to have a station folder, which is the name of your station, and then you'll have folders for your driver networks and any other device networks or device folders that you have below there will be represented in the BOG file that gets created with the migration. So there'll be that BOG file which will have the Spyder application migrated to an IPC network, and then you'll have a text file which is basically your migration report. So you can go through that and see the notes that were created on your application. An example here is a migration text file, and it goes through and it tells you like Sylk IOs, if there were any, will be migrated to physical inputs and outputs, and the next available pin will be assigned. So that's how it goes through and does it. So it gives you a list of everything there. But then if we actually look at the folder structure, in the example here, you'll see we did a I did a Spyder station migration of a station called Venom CVHU, and within there was a backnet network, and there was a in this case it looks like it's just a Venom application that I used, and it'll create a BOG file, and within that BOG file you have your IPC network. Remember, this is the IP controller network, the CIPer 30 network. Under there is your local device, is where your CIPer 30 application is, and then you have points, which is where the folders are for the actual application components. And then you have, if the Spyder application had a ZIO, S bus wall module, they'll be created in this network as well. And then if the points don't fit in the base CIPer 30 controller, it'll add the expansion IO devices for the other for all the other points that don't fit within that controller. And as I mentioned, as it said over here, Sylk IO, any other IO that needs to be assigned will go to the next available IO slot. And then again, you have the migration log. So that's how that all comes about. And then, like I said, everything would be under a migrated stations folder. And if we look at the Spyder library migration, you'll see you choose library, and then you choose where your library is, and we select that library, and you would migrate. And the way this is set up, very similar. You have the the output directory is the Spyder library parent directory, and then your migrated libraries will be the folder where the migrated library will go. So within there, you have the library name, and then you have a BOG file that represents the Spyder application. And then you have the migration report, just like you have with the station migration. And in the case here, you'll see where in a Spyder library, you could have devices and you could also have applications. So the devices that get converted or get migrated, you'll see come over here, and there'll be a BOG and a text file just like there are for the station one. The applications come in the same way, but basically what you're going to find when you expand them, you're going to have your IPC network folder, and then you'll have these applications. So in the case of applications, you're going to be expanding the BOG file, and then you can copy out the actual application, the folder, the components that you want, and drop them into your IPC network of your CIPer 30 that you're working with. Or you could take the complete device, which is in turn underneath this BOG is your IPC network. You could go into a CIPer 30 and drop that IPC network in there, and you have a completed controller. And we'll go live with all this so I can show exactly how it's done. I just wanted to go through the steps ahead of time. The next file type for migration is your exported library. So if you do work with exported libraries, it will allow you to migrate those. Same file structure. You're selecting your parent directory, then your output directory becomes the migrated exported libraries folder underneath that directory that you're working with. And you'll see in the tree structure, it'll go in and it'll use the name of the library, and it's still going to be an SLB, but within there you'll see your application, your IPC network, and your local device and everything. Same here, I expanded it further so you can actually see there's your expansion devices that were required. Like in this case, this boiler room north needed 2 expansion modules plus the base CIPer 30 to hold all of the I/O that was required. And then a custom palette, if you're working with a palette of Spyder controllers or Spyder applications, you can migrate those as I mentioned. And in this case, you're going to choose custom palette, and then you're going to select the parent directory where they're located. And you're going to select the palette that you want if you have multiple ones in here, and then it will go through and migrate those. And you'll have them available that you can open that palette again from palettes, just like you would, or like you had done with your Spyder palette that was created. Stop right here. Take any questions. Anybody have any questions so far? At any time you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask it, or you can send a chat to if necessary, if that's better. But if not, we will continue on. One of the big changes in the CIPer 30 over the Spyders, and I think most have already been through probably Lou Jones and John Hutchie's webinar on the CIPer 30 in general. But the SBus wall module is represented totally different now from the way they were in the Spyder, where with the Spyder applications, that's what's shown on the screen here, is you have your SBus wall module. It's a component, and it has a slot for every single parameter that's used. And remember, with the TR 71 and 75, you have the ability to bring in points to be able to display it almost like a little user display for changing set points, looking at statuses, things like that. So for each category, like in this case here, we have a category of set points, sensors, and status. And basically underneath those categories or folders, you have points. So the way that they're represented on the actual object of the wall module, set point dot awk heat, set point dot awk cool. So every point will be represented by a category it's in, or if it's not in a category at all, it's in the root of the display of the ZO, then it'll just show up like here: occupancy override, occupancy status, system command, points like that. And then you link other components to that. So here I'm representing, if you look, status compressor stages. You'll see down here you got status compressor stages. So you link directly to this object, and then underneath this object you have a configuration screen that you go to configure all of the points that you want to display on there. In the CIPer 30, and when they get converted, basically what happens is, if we go back, this component here of the SBus wall module, again, these are just slots as part of this component. what happens is a folder gets created, another application folder, and it's named the same. It's named SBus Wall Module. And actually, each of the slots that are shown here it's actually a composited folder. So if we look at the compositing of this module or of this folder, you'll see over here that each one of these is a point within a folder or within the SBus Wall module itself. So underneath this application folder, you have additional folders, which in turn go to, like in this case here, set points. The set points folder up here has these 6 points. The status folder down here, you can see there's points in there. So they're all represented now as individual blocks or individual components, where previously they were all part of one block. The beauty of this is you could actually have these points anywhere within your application that you're writing in your CIPer 30. So where your code is, where it's using the set points, you can have all those blocks there. They don't have to be sitting underneath this SBus Wall module. They created it this way for the migration, just to keep it simple and everything together like it was in your Spyder application. So that's the big difference between the Spyder application and the ZIO or the SBus Wall module, and then the CIPer 30. So as I say up here, the SBus Wall module becomes a compositive application folder. The categories are converted to application folders, and all the parameters are converted to parameter components within those folders. The other thing I'd like to point out, back on the Spyder with the wall module, where we tie in our occupancy, non-occupied set points to it, we have one link. Like in the case here, occupied cool goes to setpoint.occool. This actual link is two ways. So when you can change the value on this point, it changes it on the ZIO. If you change it on the ZIO, it actually comes back and it changes it in your NCI in this point here. In the CIPer 30, it doesn't work that way. So when this got migrated, if you notice, there's a nub, there's a connection on the fallback slot of these set points, which didn't exist in the Spyder. So basically what happened was these, when it was migrated, since it's not a two-way street on this link anymore with how it works in a CIPer 30, if we go over here to the unlock cool set point, you'll see the nub on the output. So what happened was it automatically creates a link back from that set point back to this point here. Whoops. Back to this point here on the fallback slot. So the functionality is the same as it was in the Spyder. It just had to be represented differently because of how the structure was done within the CIPer 30. And let's see, I don't see anything pop up in chats. And like I said, any questions, please just interrupt me. So then from there, if we look at, okay, we went through the migration, however we did it, station, exported, library, palette, whatever. What you're going to be doing after that is each one of those exports, you have that BOG file. Within that BOG file, you have an IPC network. So if it's an actual device, an actual Spyder, what you're going to do is in your CIPer 30, you're going to delete the IPC network that's in there, and you'll replace it with the migrated one from your Spyder. So it's as simple as that. Do that. Restart you really don't have to restart the station, but if you go into your CIPer 30 from there, when you copy that in, you now have a completed CIPer 30. Everything's done because of that migration. Granted, you're going to want to go back in then and double check your IO assignments, make sure everything's assigned the way you expect it to be within the CIPer 30, and just go through and make sure everything looks good. All of those migrated Spyder applications, all those components within the Spyder application are going to go underneath the sequence control program. Because if you remember, in the CIPer 30 IPC network, you actually have a sequence control program and you have an event control program. The sequence control program folder is the folder that all of the CIPer 30, the IPC components have to reside. Any of the kick control and any of the Niagara components can be within the event control program, but all of the Spyder logic will be placed underneath the sequence control program, and we'll go through that actually in the workbench. Any unassigned points will be assigned to valid terminals. So whatever is the next available pin, whichever IO pair is open, it'll actually do that for you. And as I mentioned before, the Sylk IO, it's going to migrate the inputs and outputs of the Sylk IO directly to the next available on the CIPer 30. And once the baseboard runs out of IO, then it'll add the expansion modules as needed to create your controller and the application. If it's an older Spyder and you're using TR70, it'll migrate over as a TR71 in the software. And this last item here, this links to in-out parameters are not bidirectional. That goes back to what I was explaining about the set points and the SBus wall module links. The other piece I have on here, this is because this will be a PDF that you'll have access to. I just made links up of the pertinent guides to use when working with the CIPer 30, whether it's with the migrating of it or you're just programming from scratch. So with that, that's the presentation portion, and now we're going to go in and actually work with the actual workbench. Any questions at this point? Are we good? I guess we're good for now. Nothing new in chats. Okay. So here we are. I'm running 4.8 of the web's workbench. And what I've got open here is my CIPer 30 controller. And as I mentioned, CIPer 30 out of the box, or when you first commission it, it will have a IPC network and the local device, which this is your controller. And then underneath there, you have your sequence control program and you have your event control program. The sequence control program is where your application is going to reside that was used with your Spyder, and any new programming that you're doing within the IPC programming tool will be done underneath that sequence control program. So if we go through it, you'll see that this is one that I migrated over. That was a Venom CVHU. And it looks just like it did in the Spyder tool. And then this is where it gets a little different. As I mentioned with the SBus wall module, you'll see this is a folder. So if I double click, it'll bring up the wire sheet for the folder, and then I can go under set points, and there's my set points. And as you can see, they each have the that nub back to the fallback slot of each of those set points going into the ZO. So I hadn't done any programming. I just did a migration, dumped them in here, let the controller run, and I have it up and running CVHU application without having to do much, without really knowing much or anything about a CIPer 30, and you'd be up and running. But this isn't really a class right now to go through all of the ins and outs of programming. It's for the migration, and really the intent of this class, this session, was to get you familiar with the migration utility so that if you've worked with Spyder applications in the past, it makes it easy to quickly jump in and play with the CIPer 30. I mean, I'm the type that I learn more by taking something that's already done and backwards engineering it, tearing it apart, and seeing what's under the hood. And this is a good opportunity that you could take something that you know works because you've worked with the certain Spyder application, migrate it over, create your and drop it in as a station, as a CIPer 30, and go in there and start dissecting it and seeing how everything goes together. It's just a good way to get a general understanding of the CIPer 30. So with that, if we go up as we move through this, we go to Tools, and we have our Spyder to IPC migrator tool. It popped up, of course, on my other screen. So here's our tool, and first one we're going to choose is station. So I've got these are my stations that if I go back, you can see where I'm pointing to, and I'm just pointing to my user home for this 4.8 web's workbench that I'm working on. So now my output is going to go to the migrated stations under the stations folder. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, we'll use the sample station I have here, but I'm going to back up to show you that first. What I have is I have a station that I created, and I called it sample station. And if we just open it up, actually we can go in this way. Actually have it in here. So this sample station, I've got a LAN network, I've got a backnet network. So now we just got to wait for it to open up. That should mean to double click. I don't have a network card on my laptop. But basically what I've done was I created a LAN network. I've got a device folder with 4 univentilator controllers. And I've got 2 air handler controllers that are just under the root of LAN network. Then under the backnet network, I've got a floor 1 with 4 VAVs. I've got floor 2 with 4 VAVs. And then I have 2 RTU controllers, spider controllers. These are CVHUs. These 2 are VAV AHUs pulled from the version 28 of the application library. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to convert this. So we're going to end up seeing that we're going to have a LAN network and a floor 3 network with 4 controllers under it. They'll be under LAN network. There'll also be 2 controllers under the backnet network. When we do the migration, we'll have the floor folders, and then we'll have a couple controllers outside that as well. So with that, if we minimize that, we go back up to our tool, and we say, okay, we're going to do a station. If I want, I can do every station, but in this case, I'm just going to do the one, my sample station. And again, it's going to go to the migrated stations. You can change it and have it go wherever you want. This is just a clean way of organizing and keeping track of things. So with that, we just hit migrate. And it comes back with this screen here. Actually, it does that. Redoing it, the size of it doesn't make a difference. It'll go through and shows you each controller that it found, and then that it migrated successfully, and then you have a TXT report for every one of them. So we can close that. We can go back up here and look under our user home. We said it was under stations, and then it was underneath migrated stations. So now we can go in here and say, okay, there's our sample station. There's our backnet network. Floor 1 has 4 VAVs. Floor 2, same thing. And then we have our 2 RTUs. And under our LAN network, we've got floor 3 with some univentilators, and we have 2 air handling units. So we could actually come through here. If we open up this AHU1, and remember when we are migrating a station, it's basically creating an IPC network, or basically it's a CIPer 30 station for every controller, for every Spyder controller. So we went from having this one sample station, just one station, to, let's see, we got 4, 8, 12, 14, 16 separate controller stations now that we've created. So if we look under this AHU1, let's see what's underneath its IPC network. We've got our local device. Okay, it looks like we didn't have enough space on our base CIPer 30, so we added an expansion module to it. But if we go under points and we go to sequence event, or I'm sorry, sequence control program, there's the application folder for it, and then here's the actual application. And this actually is the VAV air handler off of version 28 of that app library I mentioned. So it's a completed application ready to go on a CIPer 30. Same thing if we look at any of these others. If we go up here to this VAV, we'll see in here, it added a S-Bus wall module for us because there was one in the application. And you'll see now this is a standard Venom application. So yeah, there are no standard applications created for CIPer 30, but we have every application that was created in the Spyder world that we can migrate over and use, as you can see here. And if we go down and we go into in here, we should be able to go and find our, I guess it's down here. There's that S plus wall module, and then all of the other pieces that go with it. So that's your station migration. So now if we get back up here, what we have next, over on my other screen, let's do a library. So in this case here, we say, okay, we're going to migrate a Spyder library. Okay, select the parent directory. We'll browse. I cheated and made up a couple of bookmarks for some areas, some locations that are easier to get to just by making bookmarks. But what I want to do is take, um, let's see where I have one here. Actually, what we can do is we can go directly from this level, say, okay, I have one in here I called Spyder class. It's one I had set up in here from before. So we're just going to do a simple library and just do this one piece called Spyder class. And it's going to go underneath webs, user home, then webs, migrated library. So we'll say migrate. Okay, close. If we go back up here, we'll see we have underneath our, there it is here, migrated libraries. I actually have one controller in there and a couple applications that I've saved as well. Actually, there's two controllers. So if we look at this controller here, we can go in and actually see what's part of what is in that within that application. Same thing with these small pieces here, these applications that were created. You could actually then take and copy this piece out if you wanted to reuse it on other applications. And then the other one thing you can do, and I'm not sure how many people utilize the Spyder application version 28, but if you do use it, you have the ability to come in here. I did a shortcut for it, a bookmark. So we'll say, okay, let's work with that one. So now we have our version 28 app library with all of the pieces to it. So we'll say, you know what? Let's fly without a net. This is a demo. It's not going to break, right? It should work fine. So we'll see. So we're going to go ahead and migrate all of those. So now you have a full library that you can utilize with your CIPer 30s without having to do it in your Spyders. So let's take a few moments to do it. Shouldn't take all that long. And okay, yes, I did run this once this morning to make sure it works. So it should work. Okay, so now we go through and see every one of those applications in there are done. Say close. And if we go back up here and look, actually that's going to be underneath here. Migrated library, and there they all of them are sitting down there, including the full application. So if you have a unit ventilator you want to use, there is a full unit ventilator controller application, and it is all within there. Which then should mean that you should be able to come down here, go to our Spyder library, and let's see if we select, let's see, it's going to be here. That's not the right place. I always get the wrong directory, so we come back in here. I thought I should have been there, but that's the one that I faulted on, so it can't be. So let's try. That's giving us our standard. That's not giving us the new ones. So let's go back here. Try this again. That should be right. Unless for some reason it's saying we need to bring in each one individually, which doesn't make sense. One more try. If not, we're not going to pull it in that way. We can pull it in a different way. So we go here, 28. Let's pick one. For some reason, it's not working for me. But in any case, all those applications, as I mentioned, if we go back up here, they're all located here. So if you like using certain pieces of their logic, like you like their economizer logic with outside air dry bulb, you could go in and you don't need to go in through the library to get to it. You could just copy that piece there and you have the logic pulled in with it. Then the last piece on the migration tool is the custom palette. So if you created your own palette and you drop your applications or your actual Spyder controllers underneath there, you can actually take that and migrate that as well. Notice I just have one controller in there. I just put a Venom application in there. So if we come back down to our palettes, we can go search for it. I can go to my custom palette. And then here it would be in here. Like if you had your own and you had multiple, and you're going to have multiple folders in here, or however you set it up. But in my case here, I've got a Venom application, so I could just drop this within that the sequence folder of the application. So basically, I would be able to come in here and under my sequence control and just drop that application in and be off to the races programming it. So there are all the methods for doing your migration. And as I mentioned, if you have you have something you want to put in there, basically what you're doing is you're going to go in, and if it's a live controller that already has a station set up in there and commissioned, just delete that IPC network and drop in your new IPC network for that old Spyder device that was migrated, and you have a complete application set up. So with that, if you guys want to unmute your microphones, and I welcome questions at this point, comments. As I said, this is a great way of being able to go in and your first time playing with a CIPer 30 and just taking old Spyder programs, drop them in there and see how the CIPer 30 actually gets programmed and works with that type of logic. Anybody? I'm hearing crickets. Mr. Thornton, no questions, no comments? Hopefully I didn't put everybody to sleep. What was that?
Frank, does this work on the, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does this work on the unitary and the VAVs?
Yes. Yeah, whether it's a VAV application or the other, it will work with it, yes.
Frank, it's Larry. So if I'm going to create a new CIPer 30 station, I'm just going to go to Tools, Create a Station.
Yeah, you'll go to Tools, you'll do Station, and you're going to want to make sure you pick The I'm just looking to see. I was thinking I was the Eagle that has its own template. I guess they don't really have a template for it. So yeah, you would create from the beginning. It's actually better work and just work with what it comes with initially, because it's already then set up with an IPC network.
What do you mean work with what it comes with?
It comes already pre-commissioned with the IPC network built into it.
Oh, the controller itself.
Yes.
All right, I'm just building one here on my workbench.
Yeah, I usually, like I said, I would take a Spyder, migrate a Spyder, and bring that in as your starting point. That's the easiest way to work with it. I'll have to see if they have a template created. Otherwise, you're going to build it using the here's an IPC programming tool. That's where you can get your IPC network from. So you could drop it from here and build it that way. So if you build one from scratch, like you would if a standard JACE under drivers, just make sure you drop your IPC network, because that's what everything is built on.
I was going to say, Frank, that a lot of times when I'm working with Spyder programming, I draw on my programs that I've done in the past. Once you've successfully migrated your Spyder programming, you could pull it from your user home, parts and pieces of those programs, and build your application, because anybody's experience is like mine, you're always seeing different twists and turns of every application. So you may just want the economizer cycle, or you may just want the calculated discharge air control, or parts and pieces. So you could do, as Larry was saying, start out something from scratch and pull pieces of other programs together that you
Right.
successful migrated already, which is
That's the key. You want to make sure that,
do.
yeah, the key would be to make sure you migrate over the ones that you want to work with. And then you're able to go in from there and say, oh, you know what? I remember in this application here, I had a room control, whatever that I want. Oh, that's a little messy. I don't know.
Exactly. And you're not reinventing the wheel that way.
Yeah. So you don't need to work with libraries or anything like that. Actually, now I know why that wasn't working. I was trying to open up a migrated Spyder library in Spyder library. That was just stupidity on my part. So that's why it didn't work. Somebody else was supposed to say that and say, "Yo, stupid, that's not where you open it up."
I was muted at the time. So.
Thank you. But yes, you come up through here and you have all those available to you to be able to pull from. And again, you still get that whole, that version 28 if you I don't know how many people actually use that Spyder apps.
Parts and pieces all the time.
Right. All right. So now once you migrate, like I said, it took what, 15, 20 seconds for it to migrate. Now all of those application pieces are available that you can just take and drop into your application. And they're actually working towards doing the same thing with the new Spyder 5 VAV and the changes in the engine for the Spyder 5 controller, is being able to do Spyder migrations for that as well.
So I have a question now. If I've come up with a CIPer 30 application I'm pretty happy with, it's tested, it's bulletproof, I'm ready to go, I want to use it again, is there, other than like the means that we just discussed through user home, is there a way to save that IPC network and local device controller, which we've tested, and maybe use it again later?
I mean, you could do the same thing that the migrator did. I mean, like say this one I have running in my CIPer 30. Let's say that's one I want to use. I could just say copy, and I can come up into my user area and say, maybe on my user home, I actually want to put in a new folder, and
Yeah, but there's no like Spyder library equivalent for the CIPer
No, that's why I would say if you do it this way and you just tell it to paste,
there forever. Right.
there's your bog file, and you're just going to go under there and you grab it from there.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, if we go down in here, there is no copy to, you know, IPC library or anything like that. No. So you're going to need to create your own organization for that.
Can you expand down inside your bog file there and just grab pieces of it?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, so I could come up in here and say, oh, you know what? You go underneath points, go here. You know, I want the, I don't know, this, for some reason, I want this output control. I could just copy that, or, you know, let's go up here. You know, I want to
Window parts and pieces that you want to keep.
Yeah, I can say, okay, I want these two, or whatever, or maybe something that's down within there that you want.
It seems like to me they did in the Spyder world, they did a pretty good job on like saving applications, saving previous work through the Spyder library tool, having the ability to export it. Because a lot of times I'll make a particular application up on a single controller and I'll pop that onto somebody's network and import it. I'm trying to figure out how would I get that done with the CIPer 30.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at it. CIPer 30 is a station, so it's going to be how you would, I guess, how you typically in the past would manage your stations potentially. I mean, really, you're right. You need to come up with something that's going to work in between what, you know, how you back up your stations versus how you organize your library of control applications or controllers.
So, something to think about.
But it's nice, like I said, if you get this done and now you migrate at one that you know, it's an application you really like working with, and you know, you want to play with it, then you're able to go in, like, you know, say, okay, well, that's, how's that S bus wall module actually get configured? Okay, this one was migrated, and let's see, okay, it's set up as a TR71. Then you have your home screen parameters, how they're set up. And on the home screen, you can have 3 points. You have left parameter, middle, and right parameter on it. And you want to see where that's linked. We just use the arrow, and okay, that's going out here to a sensors category. And you know, you just go through and start really peeling away at the onion to see the different layers and how it's all configured and set up. Same thing with your expansion module. You know, you get your two, large and a small. You can see the points that it put in. Actually, these are all the points that are available. And then if you just do all descendants, it'll actually, that's the way you can see what physical points are used in your application. Which is kind of nice having that. It'd be nice if they had something like that in with the standard LAN and back. That would be, you know, normally you'd have your points list that you have, and if you have point folders under there, you don't see them. So at least with this button here, you see all the points. You just got to scroll down because they're underneath point folders. At least you're able to see what's going on. And then if sorting it will let you be able to kind of, instead of having to worry about those folders being in the way, we could sort it so that all your points come out listed together. And if you wanted a nice little report or something you want to save, you can go and export it, you know, export it to a CVS, and you got your, you know, your data so that you can, you know, have it for whether it's for your drawings or just for, you know, if you have a checkout report that you do. You know, there's all your IO, the terminal pairs and all that are part of that. That part's all standard, you know, Niagara stuff that you can do. Any other questions? I guess if there are no other questions, we can end this session. And I do thank you for your participation and your time. And if anything does come up, don't hesitate to call or email. This video, along with the PDF of the presentation part, will be up on our BP Tech Center that you can pull from if you wanted to review it further. So with that, thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you, Frank. Nice job.
Thanks, Frank.